I'm Jim Fowler. Throughout the world, when wild animals compete with domestic livestock for the same food, there's usually a movement to eliminate the wild animals. In Australia, kangaroos are thought to compete with sheep for forage. Fortunately, recent studies show that kangaroos actually prefer grass, and sheep favor salt-tolerant shrubs abundant in the arid outback of Australia's wild kingdom. Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. There are some 5,000 sheep on this big Australian ranch, as well as thousands of this country's most recognizable wild animal, the kangaroo. This is a red kangaroo, one of the 4 species of kangaroos found here that compete with sheep for food on the open ranges of this vast ranch. We've come to the land down under today on a journey that has taken us from Sydney, the capital of New South Wales, westward about 600 miles to the great outback north of Broken Hill. On this 100,000-acre ranch, a research program has been inaugurated which is headed by Dr. Terence Dawson, wildlife biologist of the University of New South Wales.
The 10,000 or so animals living on this ranch, half sheep, half kangaroos, compete for the same food and during dry periods for available water. Our project is to study the ecology of 4 kangaroo species in an effort to determine their compatibility with domestic sheep. We are capturing some of these kangaroos and placing radio telemetry collars on them to monitor their movements and feeding patterns.
2 basic methods are used for capturing the kangaroos: cannon netting by day and hand capturing them at night. We'll be observing both of these methods, but right now we're going to try to get a close look at some of the animals. Sheep are Australia's principal livestock. This flock is being herded into an area which is fenced to keep the kangaroos out. There is great concern that the rangelands of this area may be overgrazed during the dry seasons, and no one knows for sure on these vast grazing expanses to what extent the competition between sheep and kangaroos for the available food and water contributes to the problem. By isolating these sheep in a fenced area, researchers can determine if they do better than when kangaroos are present. Rather unexpectedly, we've encountered some kangaroos that have managed to get into this sheep paddock. 1 or 2 wouldn't hurt, but they have found a way to get through the fencing, and others will certainly follow. We'd better head for the fence to find out where they're coming through. As we feared, a great many have gotten in. The fact that such numbers are here is due to a recent heavy rain in this area, causing much new vegetation to sprout. We're close to the fence now, and it's obvious by the concentration of kangaroos that this is the problem area. In this case, our first step is to contact the closest of the research assistants to tell him what has occurred. Doctoral student Glenn Edwards will get help and join us here where the kangaroos are still coming through. This section of the electrical fencing has suffered a power outage, and the kangaroos are getting in. The kangaroos must be driven out of the sheep paddock, so we'll move on to join Glenn at the far side, where there's an extra motorcycle. With those great leaps, kangaroos are difficult to follow, and the truck is not maneuverable enough for satisfactory herding. For that purpose, the researchers use motorcycles, and even then it requires a lot of teamwork. One more cyclist helping out could possibly save a lot of effort. Dr. Dawson will follow closely in the truck to oversee the roundup and aid the herding team wherever possible. They're running in the wrong direction, and we've got to get them turned back the other way. Now they've begun making the turn, and we'll try to bunch them more closely together. Our objective is to force them to the point where the researchers have opened a gate. This is very difficult and dangerous terrain for motorcycle riding. We're approaching the far end, and the kangaroos are heading directly for the fence. The most difficult part of the herding is over. Grouped as they are along the fence, it'll be easy for the other cyclists to herd them down the fence line to the gate and back into the experimental paddock where they belong. We're no longer needed here, so Dr. Dawson and I will return the motorcycle to where we got it. From here, we'll go by truck to the next location, where kangaroos are being captured. In this area where the capture program is underway, there is some interesting wildlife. These birds wheeling about close to the ground are easy to identify because of their bright pink undersides and their habit of flocking so closely together in flight and on the ground. They are galahs, also called rose-breasted parrots. They're as common and numerous here as blackbirds are in America, and are considered by farmers to be pests because of the crop damage they do. From here, we'll head to the place where Dr. Dawson's colleagues have been rigging a cannon netting apparatus for the capture of some of the kangaroos. Just ahead is another of the students working here toward a PhD degree. He is Tim Clancy, and by using telemetry techniques, he has located a radio-collared kangaroo whose movements he's been monitoring. It's important to learn what the kangaroos are eating and how far they range to find their food. These kangaroo studies help the researcher determine what impact, if any, the kangaroos have on the sheep sharing this habitat. The eucalyptus trees here only grow along the creek lines, and just outside this grove and beyond the dry creek bed is where the current capture program is taking place. This part of the ranch is where sheep and kangaroos often intermingle, and that's why it was selected as a capture site by Dr. Dawson.
At this time of the year, the kangaroos are attracted to this area because the surface waters have evaporated, and all that remains is the water in these troughs.
In order to capture the kangaroos during the daylight hours, cannon nets are used. We've parked well away from where the capture crew is already in position. 3 doctoral students from the University of New South Wales have been aiding Dr. Dawson, both in his kangaroo capturing efforts and subsequent studies.
Cannon netting operations are utilised only during the dry season, when the kangaroos, unable to get sufficient moisture elsewhere, come to drink at the troughs where water is provided for the sheep. Let's join the catching team. The kangaroos are frightened by our approach, but they will return as soon as we get ourselves concealed in the area just ahead. The interplay of light and shadow within this tangle of eucalyptus trees makes it an excellent spot for us to become camouflaged. Equally well hidden are doctoral students Hugh McCarran and Linda Heafy, who are ready for the capture.
There's a returning kangaroo who is still quite wary, but he is also very thirsty, and so are these. The kangaroos will be captured by a net that will be carried over the animals by rockets mounted on the short posts to the right. The rockets will be fired by Dr. David Croft when he touches the bare ends of these wires to the opposing terminals on the battery. Timing must be exact so that the kangaroos cannot jump out from beneath the net. We've managed to prevent their escaping from under the edge of the net. But now, to reduce the possibility of injury or overstress to the animals, Dr. Dawson will quickly inject a mild tranquilizing drug.
Minimizing the trauma to the animal is very important. Dr. Croft already has his equipment ready for tagging the animal. The kangaroo's ear cartilage is not very sensitive to pain, so that's where we always position the tag. It's also good for long-distance identification of specific animals, since the tag number can be easily read through binoculars.
Very little stress has been placed on the kangaroo, and its grogginess from the tranquilizer will quickly disappear. Already it's showing signs of returning vigor. That's Linda Heafy's cue to get the animal back on its feet and send it on its way. He's one more kangaroo who's become specifically important to the research project. Obviously, cannon netting is effective, but there's another capture method we'll be trying tonight that is even more exciting as we go after the big ones. Capturing the kangaroos by night involves split-second timing and a lot of know-how. A method developed by Dr. Dawson combines both the use of a high-intensity light and a loud rifle shot to disorient the animal. All set? Since the kangaroos are largely nocturnal feeders, we should not have to travel very far to begin to find them. Even sooner than expected, we've come upon a kangaroo. As customary, the kangaroo runs a short distance, and then the brilliant light makes him freeze. This is where the crucial timing comes in, as we get ready and into position. Now's the moment for a shot over his head. It disorients him, hopefully for long enough to catch him. Half the time, the capturing technique works well, but this was one of the times it did not. The team will have to just get back into the truck and try again. Since this system works well about half the time, perhaps the next encounter will be successful. Hugh has spotted another one. The moment he stops, Dominic is ready with the rifle. This time we did it, and we're ready for Dr. Dawson.
Now that they've caught the kangaroo, it is put into a sack to restrain it and to keep it from kicking them. I will join them at once. The very first thing to do is to reduce the animal's trauma. We'll accomplish that with an injection of a mild tranquilizing agent. Among other data that we record with such captures is the weight, in this case about 45 pounds. We correlate this with other measurements in order to establish the difference in growth during bad years, when food is scarce, to good years, when it is plentiful. Our records indicate that kangaroos appear to keep growing throughout life, though at a slower rate when maturity is reached. By measuring the thickness of the tail at its base, we can determine how much fat is being stored for periods when food is scarce. This female is not only in good condition, she has in her pouch a very healthy and vigorous baby, or Joey, as the young are termed. It will be a long while before this little one leaves the pouch. It's only about 5 months old. It will leave the pouch permanently at about 8 months. that remains for us to do with this female is to attach the identifying ear tag so that no matter where the animal goes, it can be identified as to where it was tagged. The orange colour indicates this particular location. The animal's specific identity can be determined by the tag number. Now we've finished with her, and this time we'll let Jim be the one to get her off on her own again.
The effect of the tranquilizer is virtually gone already, and she wastes no time putting distance between herself and us. Scientists are gradually learning more about kangaroo and sheep compatibility, establishing facts to better preserve the kangaroos of Broken Hill. All the answers are not yet in regarding how sheep and kangaroos can utilize the same habitat, but the information being accumulated by skilled and dedicated wildlife biologists can indicate directions to be taken. Gradually, mankind is gaining a greater understanding of the complexities of our natural world and realizing that a harmonious existence can occur between ourselves and the wonderful inhabitants of the wild kingdom.